Greetings, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Scorpio Svamsa. Gemini gives us a much more colorful description of Scorpio than, say, what he gave for Libra. Libra, he just used one word. Scorpio he describes as demons, water, serpents / Vishnu, and deprivation of that contained in the breast. And so we're going to break down all of these different significations for a person with Scorpio as their Svamsa sign. But first, why is the Svamsa sign so important to our life? Well, it's going to show a person what their obstacles and challenges are on their life's path in finding their true purpose in life. So we all have a unique duty to live throughout our lives. How do we feel and how difficult is that path in life? And on a deeper inner sense, what are going to be the major obstacles as I walk that path? So it doesn't matter what profession you're in, it doesn't matter what you think about. The Svamsa sign is going to show the themes of that unique journey that you're on. And so how do we calculate the Svamsa, first of all? Well, first thing we do is we find the Atmakaraka planet. And that's the soul planet in your chart. That's the planet with the highest degrees of any other planets within any sign. And it doesn't have to be that high, as you can see in this sample chart. We have the planet of all of the planets that has the highest degrees, and this is our natal chart, is Mercury. Mercury is at 15 degrees 16 minutes. It happens to be in Scorpio. So the Atmakaraka is in Scorpio in the natal chart. But in order to find the Svamsa, we have to find out what sign the Atmakaraka, in this case Mercury, falls in the Navamsa, or the 9th divisional chart. And to do that, just reference the graph in the description of this video. And as you can see, on the left-hand column, we go down to Scorpio, because that's what the Atmakaraka is, and then follow to the right and find out what degree range that planet is in. And in this case, the Atmakaraka is falling in Scorpio in the Navamsa chart as well. So this person has Mercury, their Atmakaraka, in both the natal chart and the Navamsa chart. So there's going to be an even heightened theme of Scorpio in their life in general. So we say that this person has their Svamsa in Scorpio. This happens to be the chart of Bruce Lee, who we're going to be discussing a little bit more as this video goes on. He's a great example of a Scorpio Svamsa person. So let's go through Gemini's description. He first says demons. We'll get to demons in a moment, but he says water. And so the theme of the person for a major obstacle in their life, or a theme that they're going to be having, is water, which is a symbol for one's emotional world. So that's always going to be front and center in what they're having to deal with as they go through life. And it's similar, we're going to see that Scorpio and Cancer are two signs that have this kind of synastry with one another, as we're going to go through. And Cancer is also given the description water, so emotional worlds. But Cancer, its environment is flowing water, so water that's moving like a river. And that's symbolizing the movement of emotions, and Cancer is a movable sign. So how the emotional world is flowing through you, and how you feel your emotions, and the changeability of your emotions, and then coming to a deeper understanding and a more expansive understanding of what your emotions signify, and then being able to separate yourself and identify with greater intelligence and heightened awareness of how your emotions work. Scorpio is a fixed water sign. So fixed water is stagnant and is not moving. So the big difference is that a Scorpio Svamsa person is going to have to address what kind of emotions are deeper within them, and the obstacle being the lack of movement of one's emotional world, and getting stuck or having a stillness or a lack of flow in their emotional world. And so this is partially why Scorpio gets this reputation of being such mysterious people with depth, people that have a kind of a cunning side. It's because they have a very deep psychology, and they have an emotional world that might not be as movement orientated, but it's still very much present in their awareness, in the way that they go about the world. Their emotions are a huge part of their life. it's a water sign. That's how water signs work. Emotions become very important to the person's overall challenge in life. And a good way to think about a big difference between Scorpio and Cancer is Scorpio people are almost uniformly people who have a hard exterior but a very soft interior. It's similar to, say, a coconut. Coconut has a very hard exterior, but on the inside is the delicious coconut milk, the coconut water. And on the inside is soft, and there's the coconut meat. But that hard exterior protects that. And that's very much how a Scorpio person is. And it doesn't really matter how healthy the Scorpio sign is. You're almost always going to see that these people have a very soft interior side to them, no matter how hard they're on the outside. We're going to get into how they deal with that as we go. But Cancer, when Cancer is unhealthy, it can have this tendency to be the opposite. It's very soft on the outside, very loving, they're very open, they want to express their emotions, but on the inside they're hard, they're hardened. Similar to how a mango is. A mango has a soft exterior and you can eat the mango fruit, but on the inside is the seed. And that's a hard internal part. So an unhealthy Cancer is the opposite of what a Scorpio is like. But a healthy Cancer is someone who can have that soft exterior, but is also a soft interior. But essentially what a Cancer person has to learn is that how to protect that soft interior. But if they're a person with a very hardened interior, it's a loveless person, a person who has difficulty understanding their emotions and has a kind of a falsehood about how they express themselves emotionally. But back to Scorpio. So we have this protective layer that these people will have, and they are going to uniformly have this softness to them. And these people are going to have this lifelong challenge of this difficulty to access what's really happening on the inside of them. And one of the most common ways to describe a Scorpio person, a Scorpio theme, is a Goth person, a person who follows the style, the fashion of people who wear black clothing with the spikes. And these people are notoriously very threatening to outsiders, but they're very emotional. You know, the whole emo style of music, they're extremely emotional. That emo means emotion. So on the surface they're protecting themselves, but on the inside they are very, very sensitive people. And you're going to see that with Scorpio Svamsa. They're going to have this kind of sense that they could be feeling easily threatened by other people. They can have a very brooding kind of mentality, and they can feel very tortured by life in a lot of ways. There's one Scorpio individual, and his significant other says, "You're the tortured man." And that's because they are always having to deal with this fact that they're extremely sensitive on the inside, and they look on the outside world as very threatening, that they're always having to protect something on the inside. And this can help develop these people's ability for survival instincts. So you're going to see a theme of these people having the sense that they're always having to defend oneself, or that they're always in a kind of a mode of survival, and that it's hard for them to kind of put down their armor, so to say. But when Scorpio is healthy, as the Svamsa sign, the behavior that these people will have, they're going to be really quick decision makers. They're going to be able to react fast to things. They're not going to allow things to fester within them for too long. If they feel a threat, they're quick to move and adjust to that threat. They can be highly adaptive people in that sense. And we're going to talk about adaptivity, because that's another key theme. But adaptivity in this sense being that when they feel the world is threatening to them, they're able to think on their feet really well and be able to strategize very logically. They won't get tied up and get stuck in their internal world. But an unhealthy survival instinct kind of Scorpio Svamsa individual, they're going to put themselves in very precarious situations, and they're going to be not as good as assessing risks of situations. For example, as with the Goth people are known for being these outsiders and doing underground activities, which can be very dangerous activities. They don't want to be seen as following how the mainstream culture goes and moves with society. But by putting oneself in the kind of outsider position, you can put yourself into dangerous situations. So an unhealthy Scorpio person is going to often find themselves confronted with danger, or they're going to not be able to, they're going to be trusting to the point where they don't realize the true extent of the risks they're putting themselves in, or they'll be very slow to adapt to risky situations which could cause them physical harm. So in that quest to protect themselves, they can really think that they're more protective than they actually are, or their defenses are stronger than they actually are. And one individual with Scorpio Svamsa is Adolf Hitler, and there's so much written about him, and there's so many analyses of his personality, but he really overextended himself, and he put himself into a lot of risky situations that ended up in the total defeat of Germany in World War II. And so Jaimini goes into, and he says the first word he uses is demons. And this is a very telling aspect of Scorpio, because as we're talking about all this emotional consciousness that they're having to deal with, they're in a fight against their inner demons. And what does that really mean, that word demons? Well, in the literal sense, these are these very frightening, etheric beings that are haunting a person, that are like a voice in your ear that's telling you to do things, and it's hard to fight them off. Demons can possess a person and make them and suck the energy off of a person. And so the theme of these, so that's the most literal expression of a demon. But on so Scorpio Svamsa people can have that risk, is that they're having to actually literally deal with psychic forces that are beyond their visual sight, and they can have a very heightened ability for contacting etheric forces. Believe it or not, it's one of the most psychically active signs. It is the most psychically active sign in the zodiac. But on that, so that's the literal fight with demons. But on the other hand of that, it's not everyone in their life is going to be half to fighting demons, but we have that expression, fighting a demon. And that's really it. What that is having to look deep within yourself and see parts of yourself that you're not content with, or having to confront areas of your psyche that can be very frightening to confront. And they can scare a person, saying, wow, I didn't realize I had that within me, but this situation brought something out of me that I just did not think was there. And so a Scorpio Svamsa theme is definitely having to look into the dark side of their psyche, and to be able to just start to deal with that being there first of all, and then gradually the building up of strength in that fight against those hidden areas of one's consciousness. Scorpio is the natural 8th house in the zodiac, and the 8th house is that world. It's this unseen psychic world, these phenomena that can kind of appear out of nowhere. It's the depth of our subconsciousness, or it's the depth of our psychology, better put. And like I said about the still water, the fixed water, that still water, as the expression goes, still water runs deep. And that means that people who kind of have that still exterior, they're very deep individuals, and they have a lot of profound realizations within themselves. And so that is also, so that search deeper into oneself is very much a Scorpio experience. And in that search, there can be demons that are discovered within you that need to be purified out or fought against. And that takes discipline. So a huge part of a Scorpio Svamsa theme, a huge part of a person's life, is learning that discipline of how to control one's desires and control one's impulsivities. And we're going to get into why that is. We'll get into it right now. It's because of Mars. Because Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. And Mars, it's its own house. So in general, the lessons of Scorpio are going to have a lot to do with Mars in a lot of different angles. And Mars is that fighter within us. And so a healthy expression of a Scorpio Svamsha person is going to be a person that is ready to fight that good fight within themselves. And one lesson that Mars teaches is the fact of discipline, being able to control one's senses. Not when Mars gets frustrated, Mars becomes impulsive. And so that impulse sense is what can cause people to do regrettable things. And so in that process of fighting against one's demons, a person with a healthy Mars and a healthy expression of Scorpio Svamsha, which means a healthy expression of Mars, is to be able to do the things as I just mentioned, to be able to fight impulsivity, to be always aware of one's conduct and how one sees the world, and to behave accordingly in the way that they see. I think this is how people should behave, and I'm going to actually follow what I believe, to follow through with one's actions, to do the right thing. Well, an unhealthy expression of Mars energy and an unhealthy Scorpio is an escapist mentality, a weakness of not actually stepping in and doing what one believes one should do, but over passiveness. And what that does is it creates this kind of escapist mentality. And that escapist mentality is what gives Scorpio Svamsha individuals this challenge of, it can be drug use and escaping into fantasies. And drug use meaning abusing drugs, or wanting to, instead of really accept that there's parts of their consciousness that they don't like, by entering into an altered state of consciousness, you can then forget about those things that you're going to have to be working on psychologically. And so Scorpio Svamsha's individuals are going to have that kind of temptation part of them that wants to go into another realm. And maybe that other realm is to explore deeper areas of their subconsciousness or their psychology. But a lot of times it is just the drugs, and escapism is a crutch to not fully confront what's happening within you. And going back to the example of Hitler was addicted to amphetamines, and that's why he gave such fiery speeches. So there can be that theme of using drugs in order for an escape, or a sense to really add a cushion to the hardness that they feel that their internal side is confronted, because their external defense mechanism, if they're not disciplined, they can let harmful things into their lives, such as abusing drugs. But they want to feel that internal comfort. They want to feel that inside of them feeling very taken care of, and and using substances that do that give that sensation of feeling good, because they are very much aware that they're very sensitive, and they want to feel good about who they are deep inside themselves, in their heart, and in their internal psychology, in their internal world. So you're going to see Scorpio Svamsha people be dealing with this Mars consciousness throughout their life, and that's the fighter mentality. How well are you fighting off the parts of yourself that you're having to confront about the mysterious areas of your psychology, and how are you building up your discipline and your ability to purify yourself of influences that are only going to cause you further problems, because Mars is a problem solver. And are you solving problems, or are you just adding more problems? And so Mars is a huge part of Scorpio Svamsha, and grasping what Mars is and being able to elevate your Mars consciousness is going to be a major part of how a Scorpio Svamsha individual is going to get ahead in life, and to feel that their life has deeper meaning. So of course I mentioned Bruce Lee at the beginning. So Bruce Lee, he was not only a martial artist, but he was a film actor, and he was a very profound individual. And he was not only an expert in the martial arts, but he was very great at understanding the philosophy behind martial arts, and he had he was able to express a lot of wisdom in his understanding of how a person doesn't just fight the physical fight, but is fighting that mental fight. And he's got, so it's that spiritual and that physical battle. It's both of these working in unison. And he's got some great quotes that really show what I'm talking about here. And his most famous quote is the quote about being like water. And it's not an original quote from him. The idea of being just like water actually comes from Taoist thinking, so ancient Chinese thinking, where the traditions of martial arts are very rich. But he said, empty your mind, be formless, shapeless, like water. If you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water in a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend. And he also says, the idea is that flowing water never goes stale. So just keep on flowing. And another quick quote, emotion can be the enemy. If you give into your emotion, you lose yourself. You must be at one with your emotion because the body always follows the mind. So there you see he's using this metaphor, Scorpio, a water sign, being able to flow with water. A Scorpio Svamsa person has this challenge of becoming too fixed and being too stagnant, as he says, water going stale. So he's a person who really understood about the importance of not just looking deep into yourself and being at one with your emotions and not allowing your emotions to control you. So emotional intelligence he was very in contact with, but being like water in the sense that you're able to flow and move shape and not become stagnant. And it's a great metaphor for life in general, but as you can see, this water theme, and then not just water, but emotional understanding and emotional intelligence. And in his chart, he actually has the moon, which is his 8th lord. So his 8th house, his ability for psychic understanding, his ability for emotional depth, and addressing the hidden parts of one's psychology, is in Scorpio as well. So he's got water planet, the moon, the ability for us to perceive ourselves, our unique consciousness, in Scorpio. Although the moon doesn't do very well there, as we'll get into a little later, he has this deep understanding of how the movement of water is really reflective of our emotional world and how to become a master of that. And a couple other quotes that he has that really explains all of the things that I'm talking about, and you can look at his quotes, he has a lot of wisdom to share. He says, do not pray for an easy life, pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. There you have Mars mentality, that you're not just wanting things to go smoothly, as what the moon really wants to do. The moon wants for life to be filled with comforts and be surrounded by ease. And we all need that in our life too. We need to be able to have things that are nurturing to us around us. But he says you need to pray for strength to deal with difficulties. And that is basically saying work on your ability to build up that armor, to be like Mars and to endure and to push through and defeat obstacles in your life. He has Mars in Scorpio as well, so he has that strong Scorpio foundation. So he adds that to his philosophy. Really work on mastering yourself, and that comes from becoming a stronger person, more fortified. And then he says, the spirit of the individual is determined by his dominating thought habits. Well, that's Mars as well, because Mars is the habits that we have of how we should act in the world, what we do in the world. So dominating thought habits, that means discipline about one's thinking, discipline about one's action. And a lesson of Mars is the innocence, mental innocence, and being able to look out into the world like a child looks, and to not have pre-instilled opinions about how things should work, but to look at every situation as a unique situation with the innocence of a child. And so building up that ability to not have preconditioned beliefs dictate everything that you do, but to look at each situation as unique. And that comes from mastering your ability of Mars, a disciplined ability for thoughts. And then the final quote I want to share is, art calls for complete mastery of techniques developed by reflection within the soul. And so there is a great quote about reflection within the soul, so looking deep within yourself. And if you think about flowing water like a river, and you look into that water, you're not going to get a clear picture because the water is moving. But if you look at still water, you're going to see a clear reflection of yourself. And as I said, still water runs deep. And the more still the water is, the deeper you can see to the bottom. And so that's a metaphor we can use to look at when you're looking at yourself, the more still you become. So this is a way that you can have healthy still water, having stillness in your system and being able to allow emotions to flow in, or allow the reflection to look really at yourself and everything that's there, and to look at with honesty, with a clear picture of who you are on a deeper level. Flowing water, you can get lost in the flows of emotions. So on one hand, we don't want to become stagnant like water that goes bad and it fills with bacteria, and water needs to have a flow to it. But at other times, that still water, that fixed water, is how you look deep into yourself. And that's how you can use the ability for contemplation in order to look at the depths of who you really are. So still water, the positive side of still water is it allows for that introspection, to look and see what's reflected within your soul. And so it's not just that still water is always bad. It can be, but there are times when stillness is absolutely necessary. And through that stillness, we can go deeper and deeper into our psychology and really see who we are on a deeper level. And another very interesting aspect of the Mars consciousness that Scorpio Svamsa individuals are going to be dealing with throughout their life is, as Jaimini says here, deprivation of that contained in the breast. So deprivation of what's in your breast. So that would mean the feeling that there is something missing within your emotional center, your heart, where you feel deeper emotion. So deprivation of that. So the challenge of not being able, a feeling of loss of emotions, that you're not able to feel deep emotions. And it's very interesting that Jaimini, he has two indicators for one's mother. Those two indicators are the moon and Mars. And it depends on which of these two planets in your natal chart is the most strongest indicator for your mother. When you think of your mother, you don't think of Mars. You don't think that, maybe Venus, but the moon is a common one. Yeah, the moon is our ability to perceive. It's our ability to nurture other people and to care for other people. But Mars? Well, when you think about Mars a little more, what is a mother doing? A mother is, the process of bringing a child into the world is very much a challenge for the mother to do. And to keep that baby alive through the 9 months of pregnancy and then early on in life is very much a battle. And it's that physicality that a mother instills into the child from those first years of life that the influence of Mars can be seen. So when mothers are feeling threat, think about mothers, they're extremely protective of their children, a healthy mother, and they will defend their child at any cost. And there's those stories that, I've heard one story when a child was threatened and the child was about to be trapped under a car. The mother summoned some kind of strength, she picked a car up and got her baby to safety. Stories like that where women do these unbelievable, basically supernatural feats to protect their children. And that is the Mars element of getting that child to survive until they can take care of themselves. So Mars is a huge aspect of motherhood, which you wouldn't expect. When you also use the chakra system, Mars rules over the third chakra, the navel chakra, so where the mother actually gives the nutrients to the child. So this goes into what Jaimini is saying about deprivation of that within the breast. So that can mean that deprivation of the feeling of the lack of nurturing from a mother. So a Scorpio Svamsa person is going to have a theme in their life having to do with their mother. An unhealthy Scorpio expression is the feeling that they weren't nurtured enough in their life, or there was something missing within the relationship with a person's mother. And it can literally mean the lack of breast milk, because the first nurturing, physical nurturing aspect of a woman comes from the breast milk, deprivation of that within the breast. So a lack of breast milk would mean a lack of nurturing from the mother. So a Scorpio Svamsha person is going to have this theme. Were they properly nurtured as a young child? Do they have some kind of psychological issue with their mother? It doesn't necessarily mean that they have a bad relationship with their mother. I have a client with a Scorpio Svamsha, and this individual has an excellent relationship with the mother. Absolutely excellent. But that relationship has a very strong dependence aspect to it, always thinking about the mother. And this person is a mother herself, and she is a very good mother and a very protective person, very strong sense of that, a very strong protective nature for her child, which is very much a Mars duty in the early stages of childhood, that protective aspect that the child has to be defended because they're not strong enough to take care of themselves already. So a Scorpio Svamsha individual is going to have this theme throughout their life, that what is my relationship with my own mother? What did that mother instill within me? Did she instill the strength that I need to become a strong individual? And how am I going to show that to my own children? Or if it's a male, what was my relationship with my mother, and how do I instill those habits in my own personality? So you're going to see a very strong, and a person with a Scorpio Svamsha, they're going to have to assess that motherly relationship and what they gain from it, because a lot of people will block off or diminish the importance that they receive from their mother. But they're going to have this theme in their life of addressing, what did I learn from my mother, and were they positive traits or negative traits? And if they're negative traits, how am I going to transform them, or how am I going to transmute them or make them and heal them within myself? And that brings us to the last description that Jaimini gives. So Jaimini gives us in the description snakes or serpents / Vishnu. And what does that really mean? So we're talking about inner transformation with Scorpio. We're talking about the inner psychology and how to do battle with one's dark side, and that still water that goes deep, and how to really address one's inner world. And so serpents actually play into a literal aspect of a Scorpio Svamsha person. These people can have a very strong fascination with snakes, kind of they don't really know why, but they can be very fascinated by them, but at the same time very fearful of snakes. And snakes themselves are very fearful creatures, and they are cold-blooded reptiles without a highly developed cerebral system or a nervous system. So they live in a very fearful state of mind from predators. When you think about a snake when it coils up in its coil, one of the reasons why they do that is for becoming warm, but they also do that when they feel threatened or they're in a state of fearfulness. And the metaphor for snakes that Jaimini is using is that a snake coiled up, and as we know from, if you study what Kundalini is, the Kundalini is the energy within our spinal column, that the metaphor is a snake, and that we uncoil the snake and we move energy throughout our chakras. And that is like a snake becoming uncoiled. So transforming ourselves from a coiled snake into a fearful survival-based way of life, because a snake when it's coiled is basically trying to survive. It's either keeping its temperature high or it's preserving its body heat. It's fearful of a predator. It's trying to protect itself, or it's hunting and it coils up to enter into a hunting posture. So it's a survival mentality. But when we uncoil the snake, when the snake leaves that survivalist kind of way of being and moving through the world, when the energy moves through the chakras, what you're doing is you're cleaning out energy within all of the other centers of your existence. And by doing that, you can become more self-aware and become more, so to say, self-realized. And so a Scorpio Svamsha person, they are moving from that fear-centered mentality of a fearful snake, and they're working on they could be very fascinated with doing this type of active meditation of releasing the chakras through Kundalini energy, but it's really a process of transmuting what one is fearful about. And so they can have this lifelong theme of approaching life from a fear-based, protective mentality, how a mother is when she's always working on protecting her infant child. So these people are going to have this challenge, and the question is how healthy is this challenge when of going about and transmuting their fear or transforming their fear as the Kundalini energy transforms the chakras and purifies the chakras, which is another way of saying going through your different layers of being and finding out new things about them and be able to enter into higher levels of experience. So Jaimini uses the same word for serpents as was common to use for Vishnu, the divine being in charge of the preservation of the universe. And Vishnu is everywhere. Vishnu is another way to say God. God is everything. And Vishnu in the Vedic context is being able to look all around you and see divine existence everywhere, and everything is made up of the same material. Everything is God. So during that process of transmutation of the chakras, of becoming a fear-based person and then becoming a more realized person, is that you're seeing Vishnu everywhere, you're seeing God everywhere. So that these people, these Scorpio Svamsa individuals, have that potential to be able to transmute what they're afraid of, to look deep within themselves, and then be able to come to higher realizations, spiritual realizations of seeing God all around them. And Scorpio is a sign called a sattvic sign. So it is able to produce higher awareness and greater understanding about life and the divinity all around us. So it is actually a very spiritual sign, Scorpio. And so Scorpio Svamsa people have this ability within them, or this challenge that they can go throughout their life of how am I working towards my spiritual realizations? Am I transmuting my fears? Am I becoming more realized? Am I not staying stagnant? Am I not coiled up in my survivalist mentality? How am I able to become more disciplined and fight through and become more realized on the different layers of existence to eventually see God all around you? So that's what Jaimini means by serpents and Vishnu. Very deep and very interesting. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, of course, what we talk about every time, is the planets that are exalted in the sign and the planets that are debilitated in the sign helps us show the healthy and unhealthy themes of the sign. So there are no planets exalted in Scorpio. There are no planets Mula Trikona, which is the second most powerful position for a planet. But as we already talked about, Mars, it's its own sign. So Mars does the best in Scorpio. So we talked about that, embracing the consciousness of Mars and how healthy is your Mars consciousness in your life. The planet that is debilitated in Scorpio is the Moon. So again, we have this Scorpio-Cancer connection, because Moon is the connection. Moon is the ruler of Cancer. So Moon is debilitated in the first 3 degrees of Scorpio and generally doesn't do very good within Scorpio. It all depends on each chart. But why is that? So the Moon is the planet that's looking to be nurtured by the world. It's looking for something greater than itself and to feel good. And what the Moon needs is external stability, because the Moon is such a changeable area of our consciousness. We're always addressing what we need to grow and what things we need to get rid of that are affecting our growth, and we want to flower into our life. And the Moon is looking around it and is seeing, what can I bring into my life that's going to make me feel good? Well, as we're talking, Scorpio is a very dangerous area. It's a very precarious and threatening, and has a lot of its potential to create very hostile environments that we need a planet like the Defender and the Warrior Mars to work through. So a person with a unhealthy Scorpio Svamsa is a person that's going to find themselves in hostile environments, and that can be psychic environments, but also physical environments where they're just not getting their needs met and they're not feeling comforted by life. So they'll find themselves in situations where they were really maybe not meant to be in, or they're just not going to find in that place what they're looking for. So when they need stability, they're in an area of life where they're just finding more instability, and things aren't flowing smoothly in their, so they have their self-perception, and their self-perception is possibly moving and changing way too much, or their self-perception is extremely stagnant and not changing enough. So an imbalance with how they are looking into themselves. They're avoiding, they're changing, they're always moving around, and therefore missing the deeper and bigger picture. Or they're not changing enough and they're falling stagnant and they get stuck and feel like they can't get out of a dark hole in their life. And so that is affecting a person's emotional stability and their emotional awareness and their ability to feel emotional health. So when we're talking about the moon in Scorpio, the moon is all about our perception. And Scorpio, as we spoke about, is a place of the unseen psychic energies. So a person with an unhealthy Scorpio Svamsa can have a lot of psychic disturbances or be too open to psychic influences. And that means that they can become overly influenced by forces that just want to drain their energy. So these people need to be very clear about what they're doing when it comes to psychic work. And they don't want to be too open and too receptive to the energies around them. They have to be very careful of this, because that can lead to you becoming entirely drained of your own energy, as a vampire drains the energy from another being. So another aspect of the moon being in Scorpio, which the malaffected moon in Scorpio showing an unhealthy Svamsa, is that an overall sense of a destabilized inner world. And as I said, that can come from literal psychic influences, but it comes down to the ability to address one's emotional reality and to not be self-deceptive and to not see things that one wants to see but not is what is really there. And so these people have to really be cautious about what they're allowing into their life, to not put themselves into dangerous situations that are only going to cause them to feel hurt. And they need to be careful not to become overwhelmed by their emotional world and to go too deep, so deep that you drown. And they become, as I said, just too overwhelmed by internal energy and internal, let's say your internal world, drowning in one's emotional world. So there needs to be a healthy reflection, a healthy movement of emotions, not getting stuck in your emotional world, and to be able to have clear perception of what is actually happening and to not self-deceive. So those are all expressions of an unhealthy Scorpio Svamsa, a debilitated moon, and the mind feeling like it's constantly in hostile environments and not being able to transmute one's emotional world and deeper sense of oneself and deeper psychology into something that helps you grow, because the moon is the planet that we use for internal growth. So that is the Scorpio Svamsa. As I said, it's a very interesting and more colorful descriptions from Gemini, but a very fascinating sign. And so stay tuned for the next video. It's going to be about Sagittarius Svamsa. Okay, thank you.